planning ahead today will secure your future tomorrow. And that inherently is the reason why your estate, your legacy, your planning overall is one of the most important things that you can do, not just for yourself, but for whoever you intend to leave your legacy. That might be family members for one person, maybe charity for another person, it could be friends for the third.
Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we give you the inside scoop with top attorneys in their field. And now, here's our host, Justin West.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with attorneys at the top of their game to help you navigate the various ins and outs of various legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Russell. I just lost my zoom window there. There you go. Russell Morgan, who runs the eponymous law firm that bears his name. That is Morgan Law. Website is morganlegalny.com. Russell, how are you doing today?
Great to be here, Justin. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I was telling Russell in the pre-roll, we've been shooting back-to-back videos today. So if my voice happens to go out horribly later today, you guys will understand why, but that's life. Let's jump over and take a look first off at Russell's site. Again, this is morganlegalny.com. He's got a very clever number here, 888-LAW-1315. That's 888-529-1315. Or you can just visit him online at morganlegalny.com. And again, we'll have links to all of his information down below in the description. So if you're looking to get in touch with Russell, please feel free to reach out to him that way. Before we begin, as always, we are going to read from our sponsors. And our first sponsor today is Rank with News. Is not being found in the news regularly costing your firm or company credibility or visibility? Do you feel that getting found in Google is more about dumb luck than science? What if there was a guaranteed way to get your law firm or your business featured in some of the biggest names out there, like Yahoo News and Bloomberg, Reuters, AP News, etc., and have those articles ranking locally, even nationally sometimes, in under 8 hours for major competitive keywords that people are actually searching for and getting you into the AI search overviews at the same time? Rank with News is simply the most powerful way to hit page one safely, quickly, organically, and permanently, ranking in under 2 weeks, usually in under 2 hours. This is guaranteed SEO or search engine optimization on steroids, ranking quickly and sticking long term. If you're tired of poor visibility for your business or firm, visit rankwithnews.com to learn more and book a time to speak with a specialist about featuring your firm or business in major national 8-figure traffic sites that can launch you to page one in a matter of hours and help you dominate your local marketplace. Get exposure, rank higher in Google, build credibility, and win more customers and clients with rankwithnews.com. And our second sponsor of the top of the hour is Groove Funnels. Listen up, entrepreneurs and dream chasers. If you're running an online business, it doesn't have to mean that you're drowning in subscriptions or wrestling with a messy tech stack. Groove.cm is rolling out a jaw-dropping limited time offer, and you can run your entire operation thanks to stunning websites like Groove Pages, high-converting sales funnels, email campaigns, e-commerce stores, even affiliate programs, all absolutely free for a full year. No credit card required. That's right. Over 1 million users are already saving thousands of dollars and scaling their businesses smarter with the all-in-one platform that replaces ClickFunnels, Shopify, and more. And actually, I stand corrected. The full year free promotion is gone. That's on me. But now it's 1 month for the entire year, basically. And you can try it for 30 days for free, which is what I meant to say. I'm just used to doing the old ad read, so I apologize for those of you watching this right now. But you can visit theattorneypost.com/groove right now to take advantage of this. Sign up for free. Try it out for 30 days. If you like it, pay for the whole year. It's less, the cost of it for 1 year is less than the cost of a month with a lot of the other guys. And it's basically an unlimited business platform that replaces all of the major platforms that you use, from ClickFunnels to Shopify and email services and everything else. It really is a very impressive stack. We use it ourselves in some of the things that we do. So I recommend it. I'm not just a member, but I'm also a client, or however that works out. Visit again, theattorneypost.com/groove to learn more and take advantage of that. Also, I wanted to point out, Russell does have, the Morgan Legal Group does have a growing, burgeoning YouTube channel. They've been posting pretty actively over the last couple of days. So we'll put a link, if I remember, down in the description to their YouTube page as well. But you always get to it from their social links up here at the top of their page. Alrighty, jumping back over here, I am again talking with Russell Morgan. Russell is the principal attorney at Morgan Legal Group, PC, where he provides forward-thinking legal counsel in estate planning, trust formation, asset protection, and succession planning. His approach combines deep legal expertise with a commitment to building long-term personalized strategies for clients, ranging from families to multinational businesses. Before launching his own practice, Russell honed his skills in complex commercial litigation and transnational contract work, helping clients navigate international and domestic legal systems. He's a graduate of New York Law School and Lloyd's of London, fluent in Russian, and admitted to practice in New York. Russell he also dedicates his time to mentoring programs and educational initiatives aimed at supporting children and underserved communities. Now, that was kind of a mouthful, and I don't feel like I even scratched the surface of who you are. So, Russell, my very first question to you, as always, is what did I miss?
I think the most important part, and just overall in being a professional in our field, is being a resource to our community. And a big function of our practice and one of our key mantras is as a value add, you have a duty to provide educational resources. So a lot of what you've seen and a lot of what you've shown on our website, on our social media platforms, on our blogs, on our podcast is purely there as an educational resource. And the idea being is everyone should be able to level the playing field, regardless of your social or economic status. So we focus on making sure that education in the form of information is free and readily available to not just underserved communities, but really anybody who needs legal assistance and is either seeking to do it on their own or simply cannot afford to hire a lawyer.
Gotcha. I see some of the publications here on your website. I figured I'd pop it up really quickly so everyone at home can, if you're watching this on the YouTubes, you guys can see it. You can see the different practice areas and everything else. So there's a lot of resources here that people can kind of dig into. In fact, there's a whole tab that says resources. So hopefully that'll be.
Absolutely. And if you go into our blogs and our glossaries, there are thousands of pages of resources and educational tools and content and how-tos and do's and don'ts, just to make sure that people aren't able to do what they need to get done, regardless of whether they hire our firm or not, to make sure that we're of value, not just to our clients, but to our community as a whole.
Very good. Very good. Well, Russell, let me ask you this question. Well, if I actually, first off, let me ask you this. Give me a pitch for your firm. Tell me very specifically who you help, how they find you, and why they choose to work with your firm.
Sure. So our firm started fundamentally as a trust and estate planning and probate law firm. We've since expanded into asset protection, family law, matrimonial, commercial litigation, real estate, both on the transactional and on the litigation facing front. Our clients are retail, commercial, and multinational corporations, trusts, and organizations. So we run the gamut. And we cover everything from standard contracts, basic wills, down to complex, in some cases, multi-jurisdictional litigation involving 8-9 figures worth of money in dispute or assets in dispute. Our clients find us a variety of different ways. Of course, you can find us online at our websites at morganlegalny.com, but we have developed a fairly prominent position in our respective field. So a lot of our clients really at this point are finding us either by word of mouth or by referral, or someone who simply heard of us in the realms that we practice in. And we pride ourselves on that. And that's why we put in so much effort to make sure that we're easily accessible, that we're always available. Our firm is open for questions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, of course, our staff has to sleep, but we always have someone available that you can speak to regardless of date or time.
That's awesome. That's something I always like to hear. Is I've had the experience, and it happens with everybody, whether it's an attorney or a car repair shop, and you get a voicemail, and I just don't know anybody that leaves a business voicemail anymore. We actually some of my listeners will know our main hospital was bought out by the big conglomerate that's actually attached to the university, and it's been a nightmare because you can only leave voicemails, and you're at their discretion of them to get back to you whenever they can. So being able to talk to somebody is always just a huge thing. So I love the fact that people can get a hold of you guys. And again, you have a very memorable number, 888 Law 1315. I don't know, is there a mnemonic device to help with the 1315? I was trying to figure out if, like 1619 was that the Magna Carta or something like that. So it's a little late. I'm trying to figure out what 1315 might be, but I like that anyway.
No mnemonic device, but we've made it as simple as we can at this point.
That's totally
So,
fair. So let's dig in a little bit more into you. Why law? Did you always know you wanted to be an attorney? Did you grow up watching, I don't know, Perry Mason reruns, or what is it, Law and Order or whatever, Suits? Or is this something that you kind of just found you had a knack for and fell into?
I can't say I can't say I'm not a Law and Order junkie. I've always been, tethered to real legal shows, and I still am till today. But from today, it's more picking at what's true and what's not. Before it was for fun. But I tell the story all the time. What really drove me to pick the profession that I chose, our family came here with next to nothing as refugees from Eastern Europe. And we were thrown into an environment where you had to understand, think on your feet, learn a new language, adapt to new culture. And we came here with very limited resources. So our parents were working, 16-hour days, 18-hour days, overnight, just to be able to provide our family with food on the table. And it put you in a position to understand that knowledge is power. And that's something that my parents instilled in me from day one. My father in particular, coming here as an immigrant in the 90s, your language skills are limited, which means your jobs are limited. And my father was a taxi driver for most of his life. And this is someone that, from the date that we landed here till the day that he passed, had instilled that education, not for the sake of education, but for the sake of freedom, is one of the main keys to success. And that's something that drives me till today. It's one of our key mantras, that factor was the reason that drove me ultimately to not just become a lawyer, but to become a sole practitioner, to go private. Part of the reason being that I wanted to be a resource to my community. I wanted to be able to help people, regardless of a corporate ladder or personal gain. This was more to make sure that I was able to add value on a personal level to folks in our community, in our state, on a corporate level to companies that may have just been starting out or maybe going through a transitional phase if we're dealing with a merger and acquisition, but most importantly, to help. And I think that my opinion has always been that we are privileged as professionals. We were given the privilege of being able to do what we do, notwithstanding that we go through, years and years of school, and you owe it to your community to give back. And we do that by providing free educational resources and really just giving our clients time, whether it's a free consultation or a simple question, in some cases, a bit of work that we can do just to help. That's something that I instill not only in myself on a day-to-day, but in our firm culture and all of our staff, to understand that what we do is in fact a privilege. And because we're privileged to practice in the profession that we are in, we have a duty to give back to our community.
Gotcha. I noticed, at least on your website, it shows a number of locations that you guys have around New York, particularly New York City. Do you guys work basically in the entirety of the state? Are you focused mostly on New York City? Do you have enough business? I mean, I imagine New York City is populated enough that you probably have enough work if you were just staying there, but I was curious.
So we're headquartered in New York City. We have satellite offices as far up as Albany, as far down as Suffolk County, and they're really by appointment only. So we're able to meet with our clients in the area because we do practice in the state of New York. So our headquarters is New York City based, but we have attorneys in the Albany area. We have clients all over the state of New York. So, and that's why our staff, those who are remote, are positioned in places where we can assist clients, whether it's in New York City, in Westchester, in Orange County, in Long Island, so that we're able to be conveniently located for all of our clients. That's why we have the locations that we have listed.
This is a random question, and if it's awkward, I apologize. I noticed you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, like 14 places listed, which is amazing. And then you have a little map at the bottom, but there's one spot down in Florida. It's the Morgan Legal Group in Boca Raton. I'm wondering if that was accidentally added, or do you actually have an office down in Florida?
No, we do. We actually do have an office down in Florida as well. So that's managed by our Florida counsel. So we do practice in both states. I practice in New York exclusively, but our firm does also practice in the state of Florida.
That's impressive. Do you have your eyes on any other states that you're going to be branching out to? Like, I feel like New Jersey or something like that would make a lot of sense since they're literally just right across the pond there. Do you guys have
We
your eyes
do.
anywhere else?
So we're expanding state by state as we go. You'll see us in a couple of new states, I would say, in the next 12 to 18 months as we expand.
That's awesome. Well, good luck with all of that. Absolutely. That's amazing.
Appreciate it.
So you've been practicing for a while now. Clearly things are going well. Your firm is growing, which is exciting. Um, Obviously, about 5 years ago, the whole world went through a weird shutdown for a little bit, and different people in different places, particularly different states and different cities, had very different experiences of the pandemic and the response to COVID. I'm curious, what was your firm's adjustment like when it came to dealing with the shutdowns, the lockdowns, the changes in ways of meeting clients, any interfacing you had with the court systems or anything like that?
So we were fortunate enough that we planned ahead and we were more or less remote at that point. So we were already set up for virtual consultations, virtual meetings. Some of our staff had been working on a hybrid setting. Of course, it was a major shift. When you go from voluntary hybrid, voluntary virtual to mandatory virtual, it's a major change. But that's one of the reasons why we were able to position ourselves so quickly and adjust to COVID. It was a scary time for a lot of people. And unfortunately, a lot of professionals, lawyers, doctors, dentists who couldn't adjust with the times went out of business. So you had to learn and understand. And I think this is one of the keys just to growing and expanding a business in general. You had to learn that adaptability is one of your keys to success. COVID forced you to understand that. And we not only continued to operate during COVID, we grew, we expanded during COVID, while unfortunately a lot of people weren't able to keep up with the pace. Now, this is something that had to be done, as you know, literally overnight. We got the call, I think it was around March of that year when, the lockdown was coming. 3, 4, 5 days later, maybe a week's time, and that's it. It was full quarantine. Nobody can leave the house. Nobody can go to work. Salons were shut down. People were scrambling for food and toilet paper, among all things. I remember was a big thing in COVID, right? But we were able to keep people at ease that we were still here, that we weren't going anywhere. And this is important because even though COVID was COVID, you still have a book of business. You still have to service your clients. So you have, hundreds of people or thousands, depending on the size of your firm, that are not just worried about COVID, but I have real life issues. I have my lawyers at Morgan Legal Group that are helping me with these things. What happens now? You had other people that we were working with throughout COVID that still needed help, and we were dealing with a crippled court system that even till today is still experiencing the backlog 5 years later. So it was a balancing act of how do we service our clients? How do we make sure that our employees, our staff, have the resources, the equipment, everything that they need to do their jobs on a day-to-day basis? We did not skip a week. We did not lose any work during this time period. And how do we continue taking on business and actually producing work with the court system being delayed? And we were able to maneuver all of this because we had already been set up to operate more or less digitally on a virtual capacity, on a hybrid capacity. Of course, our staff took turns because in COVID, essential businesses, we were excluded. So actually, we were given the right to still operate. It was a dangerous time because people were afraid to go outside and get sick, but we were still able to rotate so that we can have someone in our offices doing mundane tasks sometimes, picking up mail, scanning and copying documents. But in other cases, we were able to get together with our clients for major issues where we had settlement conferences or closings or executions or things that we needed to get done. It was limited, but it was organized. And that's what allowed us to grow and thrive while others, unfortunately, just could not adapt.
That makes a lot of sense. I've heard a lot of people say very, very similar things. In fact, that's one of the reasons we rebooted the podcast was when COVID came around, everyone kind of wanted to be virtual, and all of a sudden attorneys knew how to Zoom and whatnot. In fact, I noticed you guys have very prominent on your website, video conferencing rooms, so people can just pop right in and see you, which is great. I love seeing that people can kind of adapt and roll with the punches. So speaking of rolling with the punches, I'm a firm believer that you step up to bat enough, nobody bats 1,000. Everybody fails at some point. But all failure really is a slow burn win as long as you actually learn from it and you don't repeat those mistakes. So, Russell, can you tell my listeners about a time in your practice of law when you experienced something you would consider to be a failure, but what did it teach you, and how do you carry that forward to always be giving the best care to your clients?
There are different times during growth and expansion where you're always going to experience failure. I think one of those times, for at least for our practice, had to be trial and error, and it was necessary trial and error, but nevertheless erroneous in marketing and advertising. When you start getting to a certain level, without the right expertise, without the right guidance and professionals in place, unfortunately, you get to a place that you are trying things and hoping that they work, right? So we went through a phase where we were attempting anything and everything ethical and legal, of course, but really spending money that wasn't producing, that wasn't returning on investment. That at best we were at net zero, at worst we were probably losing money. And that was one of our biggest learning curves. And it taught us the value of metrics, just to keep it really simple, to understand what your metrics are. What are your key performance indicators? And specifically for marketing and advertising, what's your cost per acquisition per client? What's your net on acquisition per client? What are your carrying costs per client? And it all starts with marketing and advertising. And it doesn't really matter whether you're geared to pay-per-click campaigns, or you're focused on SEO, or you're listed in directories, or you're on flyers and banners and bus ads. At the end of the day, it comes down to numbers. It's dollars and cents. And if you're not paying attention to your costs and your expenses, yes, you might pick up a whole bunch of new business. But if at the end of the day, you pick up, let's say, 100 new clients, and you made the same money that you would have made on 10 clients, all you did is just add on additional work.
Yeah.
So that's something that we had to learn the hard way at the very beginning, and fine-tuned immediately. So this was a learning curve, I would say, of about 6 months at the very beginning of our firm that since we've nearly perfected.
Well, again, you've got a number of attorneys working there at this point, a number of locations, so clearly you guys have it dialed in to some extent, which is awesome to see. So Russell, the flip side of that question, though, obviously is, yeah, we all fail, but we also you stick at it long enough, you're gonna knock a home run out of the park, right? What is one or two of the times in your legal career that you're most proud of? The proverbial feathers in your cap, so to speak. The moments of success that when you're laying your head on your pillow and you're falling asleep at night, you think back and you're like, yeah, that worked out really well, or whatever it happens to be. Let me know about a couple of those.
Well, without disclosing too much, coming in as a sole practitioner, it's a David and Goliath type of situation. And especially when you get into the world of litigation and you're in commercial lit or you're in mergers and acquisitions or real estate, you're going up against some very major hitters. You're going up against major firms with very deep pockets, with major experience. And we've had countless wins at this point, where our firm was up against a firm that's decades older and may have, hundreds of lawyers on staff, international footprint, and we wiped the floor with them. So, these are things that from a economic and a reputational standpoint really are what I consider wins.
I think you're muted because you're talking to somebody else, just making sure that was not accidental.
No, I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
Uh, on a personal level, my biggest successes are where I can help a client regardless of our benefit. It's great to win. It feels great. Uh, Financially, reputationally, that's all wonderful. But I think the biggest wins have to be those where you've really helped someone on a fundamental level. You've changed their life. You've uh, given them a benefit that they really couldn't live without. We've had clients that were destitute, that were homeless, that were unable to support their families, that were waiting on an inheritance that without it, they really wouldn't be able to put food on the table. We've had situations where people have lost their children. And had we not stepped in, they may have lost custody permanently. So it's those tear-jerking moments where we can reunite a family or bring a benefit to someone that changes their life, to me is more important than anything else. Because at the end of the day, wins are wins and they're great for your reputation. But the people that are going to endorse you more than anybody else are the ones that remember how you made them feel. And big wins for a corporation are excellent, and that's a great reputation builder for your firm. But for a person who you have positively reinforced and affected their life forever and changed their life forever, they will remember you for the rest of their life. And at the drop of a dime, if there's ever a need for anyone in their life, really, to need our assistance, they're your best endorsement.
Yeah,
They're the first person that'll come to bat for you. So to
absolutely.
me, those successes are larger than the David and Goliath wins in court.
That's a great answer. I think I would agree with that 100% too. I understand 100%. That's awesome. Um, I had a set of follow-up question. I lost it. Well, let me ask you this instead. Um, okay. Just kind of a silly question, but I do find that attorneys deal with absurdity on a regular basis sometimes. And some of it's stuff you can share and some of it's stuff you can't. But what would you say, because it makes good podcast fodder, what's one of the most absurd things you've encountered in your practice law? And it could be anything from, the judge thought you needed to file this paperwork, but you needed to do this other one, or you had a client in there and they came in as a witness and the witness said something, or, whatever it happens to be. But what's one of the most absurd things you've encountered in your practice of law?
I had this one story about somebody that came to see me, and they were fighting over someone that had left them their pets. Now, it's common, people leave money and their cats and dogs to other people. There was a dispute over who would be the caretaker because it wasn't clear in the documents that were provided. And these people on both sides spent hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting over an animal. It was a dispute over cats, to the point where they were in litigation for years. Uh, and at the end of the day, I believe they're still in court. And it wasn't even about the money. They truly loved the animals so much that they were willing to go to the end of the world to make sure that they were able to take care of them. So, in essence, it does sound a bit off to an average person, but on a fundamental level, if their loved one put them in charge and they really believed, both sides, that they were the ones that were wholly responsible for this cat, it was their duty. They love this. They love the animal. They wanted to make sure that they can take care of them forever. And most importantly, they wanted to honor their family. And if their family wanted them to be that person, and unfortunately the paperwork they left in place wasn't really clear whose role it would be, they were fighting for what they believed their loved ones wanted.
There you have it. Yeah, I find especially in divorce, it's never a funny situation, but sometimes, or well, asset distribution, however you want to split it, estate planning or divorce or whatnot, they all have their own shakes. I heard a story once of a family that basically the whole family fell apart over $100 platter or something like that. And the funny thing was, it wasn't even like, this was from the old country that grandma, it was something you could still buy at, I don't know, Crate and Barrel or whoever they bought it from. And the attorney finally was like, listen, you guys have already spent $15,000-$20,000 litigating this stupid plate. Can I just buy you a replacement and we just move on? And they're like, oh, we never even thought about that being a possibility. So it's funny the things that we get stuck on. And pets are different. Obviously, we're attached to our pets. They are little lives. They all have their personality and everything else. So I'm not gonna judge anyone for their love of their pets. Goldfish make great pets. We'll just say that.
Well, absolutely. And look, you never know. This $100 plate could have been, their grandmother's favorite dish that they cooked on every Sunday dinner.
Yeah.
And, one grandkid wanted it and the other one wanted it. And it's a sentimental thing. We get into these disputes all the time, and it's not about money. That's the craziest part, is people will put more money than value behind some of these items, and it's purely sentimental, and they
Yeah.
don't care how much money really gets spent in the process on legal fees and court costs and expenses and time, because at the end of the day, the item itself has more intrinsic value to them than the money that they're going to spend in the process.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Um, Hard-hitting question here. So you really have to think hard on this one. And I know you mentioned Law and Order before, but who is your favorite fictional attorney?
That's a tough question. It's I'm going to have to say throwback. It's got to be Abe Lincoln. Abe Lincoln has to be one of the original litigators, uh, who has made some of the largest impacts, fundamentally built our ethnic culture, has broken barriers, has rewritten laws and constitutional rights, and really just perspective overall. And his principles were limitless. So there was nothing that he would not fight if it meant someone was imposing on what he believed to be fundamentally important. And I think as a lawyer, you have to have that gusto, not just for yourself, but for your clients. Regardless of if you're in adversarial proceedings or you're preparing transactional paperwork, you have to have that grit to fight for your clients' rights. And look, wills and trusts to some people might be not necessarily the most exciting thing in the world, but the implications and the long-term effects that these documents can have for generations and generations, whether we're dealing with simple wills or complex dynasty planning. If you're not thinking ahead and protecting your client's rights today, tomorrow, the day after, post-mortem, you're doing a disservice to your client. And that's the reason I go back to Abe Lincoln, is because this man literally lost his life behind his principles. And had he not put up that fight, I believe we'd be living in a very different world, let alone a very different United States.
It's a good answer. I like that. And of course, we all remember that Abe Lincoln apparently was also a vampire hunter. There was a whole movie about that. So clearly, that was the exciting part, right?
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. How has your vision for your law firm, Morgan Legal Group, how has it evolved over the years?
Well, it's definitely evolved just based on areas of practice. I started this in a one-man operation in a one-room office, specifically focusing on wills and trusts and probate. We've since grown to a firm of 40 plus between attorneys and support staff with multiple office locations in multiple states. And more importantly, we've expanded into several different areas of practice where we are now covering commercial litigation and real estate, transactional and litigation facing. We're covering family law and matrimonial cases. We're dealing with elder care and nursing home issues. We're dealing with adult guardianships. It went and it became a natural progression, because in the world of trust and estate planning, all of the other areas that I've just mentioned, they're congruent. They're all interconnected in some shape or form. So that had to be the biggest change, and it was intentional, but it was also natural, because as we started servicing and dealing with more and more clients, they have different needs. You might have somebody who came with you with a probate proceeding that also owns real estate or also has a business or has a grandparent that needs assistance, has a dispute with someone that we need to deal with a breach of contract issue. So it materialized over time, and we're still in hyper focus and hyper growth and expansion on a daily basis.
Gotcha. That makes sense. What do you spend most of your time on personally? Do you do a lot of wills and estates? Do you do a lot of the family law stuff? Do you really do like 50-50 of this and that? Or what are your personal main focuses in law these days?
So my specialty still remains trust and estates, asset protection, and probate, both on litigation and just regular estate planning. I have honed in our specialty. I have expanded our realm of expertise.
Russell will be right back with us. He's being a lawyer and handling lawyer things here.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Let's see what question I was actually, while you were doing that, it was how what you spend most of your time on these days, and you're talking about estate planning and the things you focus on.
Yes. So I have stayed focused in trust and estate planning and probate, and really have expanded our area of practice. And we started with fundamental trusts and wills. We're now in the world of complex, multi-generational dynasty planning, complex trust planning, uh, family limited partnerships with generation skipping trusts. So it's materialized into a world of much more sophisticated estate planning that isn't necessarily based on how much money you have. It's more based on your needs, goals, and expectations. And it's having more tools in your toolbox and having more options for a client is really the reason why I've remained in this world. Because I till this day and will forever believe that planning ahead today will secure your future tomorrow. And that inherently is the reason why your estate, your legacy, your planning overall is one of the most important things that you can do, not just for yourself, but for whoever you intend to leave your legacy. That might be family members for one person, maybe charity for another person, could be friends for the third. The point is, why are we here? What's the reason why we put in all this work? Why do we grind on a daily basis if not to create a legacy? To you, a legacy might mean amassing a tremendous amount of wealth. To the next person, it may mean art. To the third, it can mean music. So it's passing down what was important to you, what shaped you as a person, and not just leaving a mark before you leave this earth, but more importantly, passing the memories and make sure that they live on generation after generation, regardless of who you decide to leave it to.
Gotcha. What do you think is, I don't want to say this, what's something most people get wrong about estate planning, or what's a conversation you wish more families would have before they come to you to draw up their estate plan?
So I think the conversation is the conversation. The scary statistic, the US Census recently released that 64% of all US families do not have a will or an estate plan in place. And I think the biggest problem is people are afraid of dying. People are afraid to have that conversation. And I wish that more people would just have the conversation. Because the biggest mistake that we see in our practice and just overall is doing nothing. And that's really what gets you into trouble. And having the conversation about planning ahead already puts you in a better position than someone who is doing nothing, because tomorrow isn't promised. And unfortunately, people pass away unexpectedly daily. And the messes they leave behind when they do nothing are the reason, in part at least, why the courts are so clogged up, because they're dealing with litigation over what this person intended or how they wanted things to be divided and distributed, who they liked and who they didn't like. And those are real factors. And whether their intention was to include someone or not include someone, whether things they may have given their family during life should be counted as what they're entitled to. So these are all conversations that should be had way in advance so that we can eliminate and, in worst case, limit the ambiguity. So when that day finally comes, that your family, your friends, your loved ones can focus on what's important. And that's grieving, that's celebrating your life, rather than scrambling to understand the legal system, to understand where they need to go and who they need to hire and how much money is it going to cost them. And are they now involved in legal battles that can drag out for years and years and years that could have effectively been avoided if the people had simply planned ahead.
Got it. How do you help your clients avoid future conflicts with their siblings or their heirs or whoever's going to wind up taking over when they're gone? What are the steps you can take to make that transition as smooth as possible? And has it ever just gone horribly wrong, like the cat episode before?
Well, look, you can plan as much as you want. There's always a possibility that things can go horribly wrong, and unfortunately, some of those instances are where someone passes away in the process of putting a plan in place. And that happens too often, where either by age or medical condition or some other reason, they got to the table where we're preparing what we need to prepare, but unfortunately they pass away before they can finalize. In terms of how do we plan for as much as possible today, experience is the best teacher. You have to be able to guide your clients to as many contingencies as possible. You have to help them understand that as unlikely and as unfathomable as you might think it may be, that things happen, relationships change, emotions change, and dynamics change. And the way that, let's say, your family operates today while you're here may not be the same when you're gone. And the one thing that I tell all of my clients especially when we're dealing with their estate or we're dealing with a probate issue after the fact, is family until there's money on the table, and then we see everyone's true colors. So it's our job as professionals to make sure that we can plan for as many contingencies as possible today for the sake of your family, for the sake of your friends, for the sake of relationships, because money tears people apart. And the more we can predict, the more we can plan for, the better off your dynamic will be after you're no longer here.
An ounce of prevention, as they say. You can't smooth every mountain down. You can't foresee all futures, but yeah, you can take an ounce of prevention and hopefully stave things off. Can you tell me about a situation maybe where a client came in and didn't realize how long and complex a probate case can be? Tell me what happened and how it all resolved. And have you ever had one that was across multiple states or counties or even multiple countries?
We've had all of the above. We've had probate proceedings that are across multiple states. We've had them across multiple countries. People don't understand the complexity of probate. Just the routine information and due diligence and info that the courts require to finalize a probate proceeding. And in New York, for example, these cases can go on for years. We've had instances where clients, especially post-COVID, have this expectation that things are now back to normal. And I will be the first one to tell you that I am one of many practitioners in the state of New York that still, till this day, has cases that are open pre-COVID and beyond. The probate system in general is not just complex, it's arduous, especially when we're dealing with multi-state jurisdictions where someone died in, let's say, New York and left assets in 4 other places. Or let's say someone who passed away overseas but left assets in New York. Every place where we need to go and recover, every state, every country, it's a separate court proceeding. And a lot of times people just don't understand that. And it really starts from the lawyers. It starts from the professionals that need to do a better job educating their clients. The amount of times that I've had to explain to my clients, who, by the way, have had counsel before me, that a will by itself, without going to probate, is just a will. And until it's admitted, until the court approves it, until they appoint an executor, it has no real legal weight. So it's not just the time factor, it's the fact that people need to be clearly educated on the fact that part of it is making sure your paperwork is right. The other part is actually getting through the court process. And you have to set reasonable expectations that this may take years. And this is part of the reason why, because probate takes so long in certain jurisdictions, and especially when we're dealing with multi-states, why trust planning and family partnerships and alternative structures in general have become so prevalent, because they're a means for us to avoid having to deal with the courts, at least in part, for purposes of transferring assets. So that's something that we show all of our clients who are either entering or exiting a probate proceeding to eliminate the need for it in the future.
Makes sense. How do you help your clients deal with say, their legal goals when it comes to balancing also the emotional weight of planning for death or incapacity or potential sibling rivalries or rivalries between their children or whatever it happens to be? How do you balance that and help them bring a clear head to it?
You know, a lot of this is they're emotionally loaded questions. I like to take the law out of it and just simplify it and really sit down with our clients and help them understand that at the end of the day, these are decisions that are personal to you. They're specific to you. It's not so much what the law will allow, or of course we need to make sure that it's legal, but it's more how do you feel about the decision that you're making? And are you comfortable with the decision you're making long term? The other thing that I stress to our clients all the time is nothing is set in stone. That if you decide to make changes in the future, you're completely able to do so. So, something that may be a very serious decision that we're incorporating today, you might change your mind 6 months from now, and that's okay. Your feelings might change about a certain decision you made. Your opinion may change. Your relationships may change. And that diffuses the situation a bit. It helps people with the stress of the overwhelming amount of information and decision making that they have to make in the process. Just knowing that someone is there to help them on a personal level and let them know that there is no wrong answer. And what's right for you is right for you. And that doesn't necessarily have to be right for everyone, as long as it's right for you.
Makes sense. Um, what what legal changes have really come into play since you started practicing law? And do you see any big changes or big trends coming down the pipeline? Or is estate planning law more stable than other aspects?
Now, there are major changes coming, with every new political party that comes into play. There are always going to be changes, whether it's changes in the estate tax thresholds, changes in Medicaid, Social Security, tax planning, mortgage interest rates. This is something that's dynamic, and that goes back to the educational part of our practice. It's something that we instill and we make readily available to our clients to make sure that they're kept up to date with any new changes. So you have to understand that there are always going to be changes. Nothing is static. And if you're not up to date, if you're not able to adapt, you may very well be suffering as a result. Staying informed, staying educated keeps you ahead of the curve.
That makes sense. How do you think AI or other legal tech is going to be changing the field? Do you think it's going to shape the work that you guys do? Do you think you'll be picking up the pieces when people go to Lawyer GPT and they have it do their will for them, and then it turns out it biffed it, and you guys have to pick up the pieces? Or do you think it's going to be more of a help than a hindrance?
I think there's a bit of both there. I think AI is going to have a very positive impact on the legal practice as a whole. It will also be a resource for people, but it can't be an end all. Even it's in its preliminary stages, you hear about these cases all the time where somebody's used AI for some sort of legal purpose and it's gotten them in trouble in court. It's already coming out. So it could be used to minimize work that is otherwise outsourced or done by an assist, but you will not be able to replace a professional. You will not be able to replace human touch with artificial intelligence. It will definitely serve as a resource, but you will need a true professional at the helm who's able to use AI to minimize client expenses, to streamline workflows, to help their staff, to improve their ability to help their clients, but still making sure that they're at the helm, in control, and most importantly, accountable.
sense. And I would agree with that. They suggest that AI is something I'm really fascinated by, but they suggest that by the end of next year, and I honestly think it could be the end of this year, as much as 90% of all content online will be AI generated. And I think that that's crazy. But also it doesn't surprise me at the same time. Um,
Absolutely.
I wouldn't be surprised just to see, I mean, and one of the reasons I do this podcast, in fact, I think we were talking about this in the pre-roll a little bit, but I feel like there's a real premium for artisanal human content, for being able to just connect with somebody, know that they're a real person. They even have AIs that can look like people talking now, and it's
Right.
getting better every year, and it might be indistinguishable in a couple more years. There's that famous video of Will Smith eating spaghetti, and they did it just like a year and a half. It's about 3 years ago at this point. It looks terrible. Like you can
Right.
tell vaguely it's Will Smith. You can tell that there's spaghetti being eaten, but it's terrible. And a year and a half later, and he's like sitting pristine on the beach eating spaghetti and drinking. And there's still little glitches. You can tell that it's AI still occasionally because he like sucks up the spaghetti or whatever. But like
Right.
it's amazing to see it evolve so quickly. And I'm baffled to see where it's going to be in a few more years. But I think that these kinds of conversations, I think that authentic human touch is something that will still be very hard to replace. Um, so let me ask you this. If you weren't an attorney, if you had to step away tomorrow from law for whatever reason,
Justin, I'm sorry to cut you off. We're,
oh,
we're going over. I do have a 2 o'clock that I'm already late to.
you're already late for it. Well, I
Yeah.
apologize for that.
No, it's
Well,
okay. And I would love to stay on, but I do have to jet.
I should have gotten a clearer notice on you had a hard stop at the beginning, so
Yeah.
I do apologize for that. Well, Russell, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up here, ladies and gentlemen. As a reminder, if you are watching this on any of the podcast repositories, we appreciate a like, a subscribe, and a share. Though we do talk about legal topics on this podcast does not itself constitute legal advice. And if you need legal advice, please seek an attorney that is dealing in the competent in the area that you are dealing in. Obviously, if you're in New York and you need an estate attorney, probate, etc., please feel free to reach out to Russell. We will have all of his information down below as well. And if you know anyone that would benefit from this knowledge, please share this video with them because, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. And sharing this video will help them get the information that they need. So, Russell, I appreciate your time today, and I wish you the best of luck. And to everyone else, sorry for the abrupt end, but that's life sometimes. And we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Justin, great to be here. It was a pleasure, and I hope to see you again soon.
All right. And most of you guys are going to wonder why I'm doing an intro in the middle of the show. When we were talking about a week ago, something came up, a scheduling conflict, and we were not able to finish the podcast. So Russell was very gracious enough to come back on the podcast. And we're actually in my house in the midst of packing up for our 2 week long trip. We're going to go camp on the beach and everything else. So it's just one of those crazy days. But I wanted to be able to ask Russell our very famous, closing 3 questions. So here in a minute, Russell, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you precisely those questions. To give them to you so you can percolate on them as we're thinking. And you guys, if you didn't notice, we're in different clothes and everything else. It's amazing, right? Question number 1 is just going to be this. If I gave you a magic wand and you could change one thing about your law firm, what would you change? Number 2 is if you can go back in time and meet young Russell and maybe give him some advice, perhaps, fresh out of law school, what advice would you give yourself and why, other than the obvious, which of course is buy a lot of Bitcoin and hold it to 100K, right? And question number 3 is I have a magical pen here. And if I gave you this magic pen and you could make one change to one law, you can add a law, edit a law, or delete a law. What law would you add, edit, or change? While you're percolating on that, we're going to jump over and take a look at your website one more time so we can do our closeout. Again, I am talking to Russell Morgan, who runs the eponymous law firm that bears his name, the Morgan Legal Group. You can visit him online at Morgan Legal NY, as in New York, Morgan Legal NY. And again, he does all sorts of things all over New York, Bronx, Queens, all the boroughs, asset protection, guardianship, elder law, wills and trusts, probate, estate planning, all the things. And I'm pretty sure we talked about most of those on this podcast, but it's been about a week, so I'm actually fuzzy on everything we talked about. But I think we were having a really good conversation. We were a good hour into it, so I'm going to assume we hit all the high points anyway. But again, you can find them online at morganlegalny.com. And as always, we will have a link down below. And if people want to get a hold of you, right there on the homepage is a schedule for a consultation. I'm assuming is the initial consultation, is there a cost to that? Or what is the process if somebody wants to work with you, Russell?
So general consultations are free of charge. Case specific may have a fee associated, but for new clients, we do offer free consultations.
Well, there you go. And as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. So if you have an issue, if you're in New York, you got a probate issue, you got a will or trust or anything that you have a question about, get advice. Figure out at least what the framework of what you're working in would always be. So I think Russell would be great resource for you. That's morganlegalny.com. We are going to read from our last sponsor for the day, and the last sponsor is Rank with News. Is not being in the news regularly costing your firm or your company credibility and visibility? Do you feel like getting found in Google search is more about dumb luck than science? What if there was a guaranteed way to get your law firm or your business featured in major national publications like Yahoo News, Bloomberg, Reuters, Forbes, AP News, and others, and seeing those articles ranking locally, even nationally, sometimes in under 8 hours for major competitive keywords that people are actually looking for? What else would you need to know? Rank with News is simply the most powerful way to hit page one of Google quickly, safely, organically, and more or less permanently. It's like guaranteed SEO or search engine optimization on steroids, ranking quickly and sticking long term. If you're tired of poor visibility for your business or firm, visit rankwithnews.com to learn more and book a time to speak with a specialist about featuring your firm or business in major national 8-figure traffic sites that can help launch you to page one in a matter of hours and help you dominate your local marketplace. Get media exposure, rank higher in Google, build credibility, and win more customers and clients with rankwithnews.com. All right, so Russell, question number one. I have a magical, there we go. I have a magical pen or a magical wand. And I give you this magical wand, and with this magical wand, you can change one thing about your firm. What would you change about Morgan Legal Group if you could change anything?
Well, look, I think that everybody has room for improvement, but I'm going to say predictability on market and what types of areas of law and really what markets need our assistance before they become saturated. You know, we had a very lengthy conversation about AI. This is going to be a very prominent area of law in the coming years. So if I can wave a magic wand, it's more predictability. It's anticipating where the pain points are, whether it's financial markets, mortgage crises, recessions, or positive things like new technology, new medication, new treatment that give people a need for a value add. And it gives the profession the ability to assist and play a pivotal role in something as important as artificial technology or medication or treatment or a growing market that needs people and needs help and needs professionals with the right guidance and tools to make sure that all the systems and processes are put in place effectively and efficiently.
Well, that's a very good use of a magic wand. I like it.
Nick
That
Barnes, so
there you go. Well,
that's
you might take use of one of our sponsors. I think they can help you get in front of those trends too. So free shout out to Rank with News. All right. So question number two. You and I are able to go back in time without breaking the space-time continuum. And maybe you see young Russell there, and you can whisper just a couple of words of advice in your ear, other than the obvious. What advice would you give yourself at the beginning of your career?
you know, when you go into private practice, everybody kind of makes sure that they're doing the best they can. I think the best piece of advice I would give myself 10 years ago, aside from the obvious of investing in Bitcoin when it was at $1 a piece, would be to stop and look around. And instead of focusing on growth and exponential expansion, which is of course most important, is make sure you're enjoying your victories. Count every blessing and make sure you celebrate your wins, big and small, because Rome wasn't built in a day. And the way that I see it is every empire is laid brick by brick. So your smallest victories are just as important as your largest. Stopping and enjoying the moment because, Justin, let's call it what it is. When we were in our 20s, when we were in our teens, we couldn't wait to get here. Couldn't wait to get to 10, 15, 20 years out when we're adults and we can live and do what we want and we have freedom. And now the times just go by so fast that you wish you can buy back your time. So that's the best piece of advice I would give anybody starting out in the profession is enjoy the moments and celebrate your victories. Every victory counts because it brings you one step closer to that level of success that gives you peace.
I think that's good advice for anybody. Absolutely. And I think we would all do well to bear that in mind. You know, it's funny you say because I think that our life does go faster the older we get, and I think there's a reason for that. This is my theory for 20 some odd years. But like when you're 5 years old, waiting for your birthday takes forever, right? But because a year is a fifth of your life, and proportionally waiting for a fifth of your life is crazy. But at this point, we'll say in my 40s. We'll say I'm 40. Uh, a fifth of my life is now 8, 9 years, right?
Right.
Like the same amount of time, the same duration, a year when I was a kid is now an 8 or 9 year span now that I'm adult. And so proportionally, a day just is less time. It's still the same 24 hours functionally, but it goes by faster and faster. So I think that's a wonderful piece of advice and something everyone could learn from. So 100%, I'll give you gold star on that one. All right. So my favorite question is my magical pin. Now this pin comes from a friend of mine who's a pharmacist, and I'll give him a free shout out. It's Donovan Drug. They are a little tiny pharmacy in Troy, Kansas. So if anyone is watching and you're in the Troy area and you need a pharmacist, you already know about him because they're the only pharmacists out there anyway. So free shout out to Doug. But this pin seems to have fallen into some sort of a vat of chemicals that altered its properties, and now it has the ability to write laws, change laws, and edit laws, but it's almost out of ink. There's only enough ink for one change. So if I gave you this magical pen, Russell, and you can make one change, what change would you make and why?
If I can rewrite one law, I would make education free of charge. And this is something that I think is specific not only to the US, but to any developing country that is trying to grow and expand their GDP. Education for the sake of education has so much value to our society that making it a universal need is so important. It not only expands our minds, it builds professions, it creates wealth, it creates opportunity. It takes people that otherwise would have not been able to have the careers and the jobs that are available to them because of their degrees. It gives you perspective. It allows you to open your mind to other ways of life. And I think that it's an unfortunate circumstance that a lot of people are held back because of the cost of education. And I don't just mean professional education. We can take it all the way back to college and private school if we're going to secondary school and primary school. And I think it says a lot about the developing countries that have adopted this mantra, that have made universal education free of charge, especially when we get to your graduate degrees, when we get to professional schools, lawyers, doctors, accountants, and the like, because you're creating a nation of erudite, well-rounded people that are adding more and more value. And if nothing else, we're here to advance as a race. And if we're stuck and limited in our capacity, our mental capacity, there's no growth. So we're just continuing to stagnate over and over. And making universal education free of charge would be such a dynamic shift. Not only would it expand the population's perspective, I assure you, it would shift our debt to income ratio for the entire economy. You have a whole class of our generation who are in their 30s and 40s that now are struggling to buy their first homes because they're drowning in student loans. People were taking out mortgages, to go in, not mortgages per se, but loans the size of mortgages to go to college and to go to graduate school, to go to professional school, not being old enough to even understand the consequences of what they're doing. And now we're in our 30s and 40s and understand that had I not been carrying this giant weight on my back, maybe I'd be able to open a business. Maybe I would be able to buy a home. Maybe I'd be able to donate to the community and give back some of my earnings. And it's such a wild monopoly that, to me, it would be a fundamental change and a necessary cause overall. And if we go back to 2008 and you take a look at what happened post-mortgage crisis, where it was just a free-for-all, and at the end of the day, it exploded, and we had to restructure. We had to rebuild a system that was functional. I assure you, the education system will follow. There will come a day where our student loans will balloon and explode, and our economy will have to adjust. And that magic pen would essentially fast track that whole transition, bringing us into a society that is able to progress naturally without being worried about the financial pressure associated with growth.
In the words of Schoolhouse Rock, knowledge is power. So I like that concept. I'm interested now. I might push back on this because I'm kind of curious if you're like, I want every degree, no matter what it is. There's people make the joke all the time, what is underwater basket weaving, or whatever it is. Would it be all degrees no matter what, or would it be like STEM and humanities? Or I'm a philosophy and history guy myself, so obviously I think that philosophy makes you a very well-rounded individual. So would this be just free education no matter what it is? Would there be any limits on it, or any hard what's the word I'm looking for? Criteria?
Well, look, you have to have some measure here, but universal education would be the underlying theme. Universal education, similar to universal healthcare, and I think we're heading in that direction as well, is not necessarily something everybody agrees with. But when you look at the long-term benefits of universal education and making it free and public for all, you see other societies that have already incorporated. If you look at other countries across the world that have higher education, specifically colleges and grad schools, professional schools, specialty, if you're, let's say, a mechanic or a plumber, that have adopted this, their economies are exploding. The job markets are out of control. The business and the GDP growth are exponential. And this is because they're making more money, so they're reinvesting it back into the economy rather than carrying debt. So the inflation has dropped and their currency has increased and their GDP has increased. And the states will follow suit because that bubble will explode. And when it does, we will have to adapt.
Well, I love the concept, and if I can get you my pen, we'll see what happens. So, well, Russell, thank you for your time today and last week for coming back on and wrapping up the podcast. I really do appreciate it. I always like to let my guests have the final word. Of course, you just left us with, I think, some very inspirational wisdom already. But are there any last thoughts or final words or parting words of wisdom you want to leave our listeners with?
I would just say plan ahead. That's the mantra of our firm. You can find us at 24/7 at Morgan Legal Group or morganlegalny.com, or on social media at Morgan Legal NY, or 888-529-315 24/7 for any legal needs in the state of New York.
Well, there you go. There you go. That's awesome. Well, again, Russell, thank you very much for joining me today. This has, as always, been The Attorney Post. I am your host, Justin West. And as always, though this podcast does deal with a whole range of legal topics, it does not itself constitute legal advice. And if you have a legal issue, you should always seek the advice of a competent attorney in the area that you're having an issue with, who serves or works in the state that you're in. Obviously, if you're needing somebody that does a whole range of business law, probate, wills and trusts, and everything else that Russell does, I think he would be a wonderful resource. Elder law, special needs planning, Medicaid, and home care, family law, and immigration, the whole gamut. Please feel free to find him out. Again, we'll have his links down below in the description. And as he already gave you, Morgan Legal NY, Morgan Legal Group, as well as 888 Law 1315, 888-LAW-1315. As far as the podcast goes, if you're watching us on or listening on any of the podcast repositories, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, whatever, we always appreciate a subscribe and a share and a like and a rating and everything else. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment down below. Let us know how you found us and if you learned anything in this podcast, or if you have any words of wisdom to share with Russell or with yours truly. But the most important thing you can do is, if you know someone who could benefit from the knowledge in this podcast, please share this with them. Help them to get the help that they need in order to be better equipped to handle whatever they're going through. Because again, as I always say, as is the tagline of this show, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Until next time, thank you for listening, guys, and have a good one.